I just imported the Dungeonizer Easy Random Dungeons asset. If all you do is open the sample scene, click on the Dungeonizer in the hierarchy and click Create Now, it creates a random 4-room dungeon. Now, I think something's a little funky because it looks to me like these are floor tiles, but they're rotated, so I'm going to see if I can fix that. It turns out all I had to do was click on this, and it starts working. Now I was looking around in this map and I saw these little yellow things, and I don't know what these are. And it turns out, if you can see the whole thing, they're a treasure chest in this dungeon. So I want to make them visible. It turns out the way to do that's really easy. I didn't have to make any new game objects. There's actually a height fix feature right here. So I put a 1 in there and they started showing up. You can see that they're floating above the ground now. In fact, maybe even a little too high. What does 0.5 do? Now they're pretty much on the ground. So that's cool. What if I want to make the dungeon bigger? I can change maximum room count to 10. What if I want to make each room bigger? I can change the min and max room size to make it however big I want. 10 by 15, much bigger. Note that each of these tiles, it could be a lot lower and still have wall above it. And so I'm going to make a new game object and offset it. Create empty, offset floor 3D. I'm going to take the existing prefab, drag it in there. I'm not going to do anything else to it except, so I'll move it down by 0.5. And I'll zeroize the X and Z values. I'll make a new prefab out of that and drag that in for the floor 3D and see what happens. Now they're all turned sideways again. Well, that's because in my prefab, I have it rotated by 90 degrees in this child game object. So it's not going to mess with that rotation. It'll clear out this rotation, but not this one. So if I hit apply, there we go. These tiles, floor tiles, are a lot closer to the bottom of the dungeon walls. In fact, the chests are a little bit too high now. There we go. What if I wanted a little more spread out? Well, there's a room margin here. It was set to 4 originally. It looks right. And if I set it to 15, note that not every room is spread out by 15. Like this room is not spread out 15 from this room, but the maximum spread is 15. I knew that because I hovered over room margin and it gave me a tooltip, maximum gap between rooms. So what if I said 45? Totally different. These are still very close to one another, but that one's very far away from its neighbors. What if I want to make the whole thing expand out in every dimension? I can do tile scaling. Let's try this. I haven't tried this yet. 4. Interesting. So it puts space in between the tiles. I kind of expected it was going to explode the tiles larger, but that's okay. It didn't do that. Yeah, in the Dungeonizer, if I make the tile scaling 4 and then I go to the floor prefab and make this, which was, the tile scaling was 1.2, so I make this match, then my guess is that all the floor gaps will fill in, but not the ones near the walls or on the walls. Let's find out. Yeah. If I want, I can do the same thing with the walls. Yeah, now it looks more or less like it did. However, the chests, as you can see, are relatively much smaller. What if I want more chests to be spawned in the maze? Well, there's a count for that. There's a setting in the inspector. There's min spawn count and max spawn count. So I can change the max to 300, and now there will be hopefully many more chests. Let's find out. There's certainly more in that room. Okay, I scaled it back down, and if I'm just looking informally, I can see a lot more chests. But what if I want to spawn them just along the walls? I can do that by clicking spawn by wall, and you can see that the only chests are the ones that are right by the walls. Same in this room over here. And here it says spawn in the, and if I expand it out a little bit, middle. Let's try that. So put one chest here, one there. So there's one in every room. It seems like they would even double up, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's even fewer chests than we specified. So basically it says if you're going to spawn in the middle, only spawn 1 per room. We've got 10 rooms. If you change the spawn room to number 4, and as long as it's less than the maximum room count, and they all spawn in that one room. You can see there's none in these other rooms. Here's a real numeric specificity. So if maximum room count is 3, Setting it to spawn room 0 will distribute it out randomly over all of the rooms. Spawn room 1 will put it in room 1. Spawn room 2, put it in room 2. But we've got 3 maximum rooms. Spawn room 3, what does it do? Well, it only puts 1 in a room 3. Now what if we put spawn room 4, which is way outside the range? It goes random again. So I think it's smart that they went random when the spawn room is higher than the maximum room count. I think there's a little bit of a bug when the spawn room is equal to the maximum room count. And that's really not a big deal at all. Okay, I'm going to make a new chest to show you something. Create material, and I'm going to call it chest 2 M for material. Now copy the chest prefab by holding down Control and dragging it. Call it chest 2. And I'm going to call the first one chest 1. Now chest 2 material needs the same shader as the first one. I figured that out because I looked at this. It says sprites default and it says shader sprites default. So if I go select shader sprites default, I can give this one a tint. I'm going to give it a red tint. Now if I drag this chest 2 material onto chest 2's material field and I drag chest 2 into the scene, you can see that it's red. So what if I want several types of chests? I can change in the spawn options, change the size to 2, and I can add a different chest, chest 2. And I can put this one along the walls, and I can say just 10 of them in any room. And on the other hand, the maximum room count is 6. I'm going to put this one in room 3. Spawn rotated means it's somewhat randomly rotated. And let's see what happens now. Looks correct. So there's golden chests in this room, and then red chests along the walls of many of the other rooms. It's distributed randomly. I'm going to copy this floor 3D prefab so I can make unique rooms. I'm going to make a new material for it. And I'm going to call it floor 3D 1M. And I'm going to make it green tinted and make it metallic. And I'm going to drag it into the mesh renderer of the floor 3D 1 tile that I've got here. So floor 3D looks gray, floor 3D 1 looks green. Now back in the Dungeonizer, I can make a custom room, and I can give it the same walls, but I can give it a different floor. And let's see what that does. Yep, one of the rooms has a green floor, the rest of them have gray floor. You can also specify which number of the room you want it to be, like 2 or 3. Let's make it number 3. This asset Dungeonizer is just really cool. Now this also has the ability to add doors and different corridor floors and corners to each room. I haven't really grasped how a corner works. What I did was create a corner 3D prefab, which is just the walls 3D and an empty game object. But it rotated the walls 3D 45 degrees around the y-axis. And I made that the corner prefab here. And now when I generate, the maps come out kind of weird. You see they're disconnected, or just a straight line like that. So there's something funny going on. However, it is actually putting the corner prefab in the corners. That's nice. So there's something for me to learn more about that because it's not working right. I tried this corner rotation box and it didn't seem to do anything really at all. It still had strange problems. I started with the offset floor 3D that I made earlier. I copied it, called it corridor floor 3D, and I changed the color, the material, to the same as the floor 3D 1M that I made earlier. And then in Dungeonizer, I dragged the corridor floor 3D prefab into the corridor floor prefab here, and I end up with this, where all the corridors have that for their floor. It's exactly what you'd expect. I added this simple door prefab from the Igor theme that was in the Dungeonizer assets to the door prefab field of the Dungeonizer inspector window. I got a little bit of a strange result. There's a door here, but there's not that many other doors. Like there's not a door in every corridor, that's for sure. Now let's look and try it again. Okay, this time there's a door on either end of that corridor and on either end of that one. On this one end of that one, on both ends of that one. That's pretty good. So maybe it's just random doors. Maybe it's, yeah, that actually makes sense for a random dungeon. Let me make the room count larger. Oh, okay, not every corridor has doors, and some have more than one. This one ends up with very few doors, but technically it does have 1. There. I figured something out. Usually when I've been pushing create now, I don't get all that many doors. I get some, but it's somewhat random. Well, I figured out that if down in this custom room, if I just wipe this out, that time it had it on virtually every corridor. Yeah, that time there's 2 doors on every corridor. Let's try it again. 2 doors on every corridor. To be honest, that's what I expected. Yeah, it looks like it's consistent. 2 doors on every corridor. Okay, so that works. So I haven't figured out the corner prefab, but I figured out pretty much everything else about this asset. And for what it is, it's fantastic. I really like it, and I'm going to be using this on a lot of upcoming projects. So if you like this video, then subscribe and like, and thanks for watching.